And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are live coming to you from around the world at Extreme Health Radio. This is going to be a fun show. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope you're having a great day, the start of a great week for you guys. This is episode 595, and we're closing in on 600 shows. Isn't that crazy? We're going to be talking with Patrick McKeown about oxygen and breathing. Something so simple, right? Something so simple, but yet affects such a huge part of our lives is breathing and how we breathe. And we're going to introduce him in just a second. I just want to let you know that we do broadcast live 3 days a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. So if you're subscribed to our Extreme Health Academy Facebook page, or if you're a part of our Extreme Health Academy YouTube page, you'll be able to get notifications of our live shows. So make sure to subscribe on both those places to get access to the live show and answer your questions and listen and participate and all of that good stuff. So with that out of the way, let me just tell you a couple of our upcoming guests. Later today, we have Stephanie Seneff, and we're going to be talking with her about glyphosate and autoimmune disease and congenital defects and cancer, and how glyphosate impacts those disease processes. It's absolutely crazy. And she has apparently some new research she was telling me about. So that will be really interesting. That's coming up in about an hour and a half from now. Then we have Angel Howerton. I think that's how you say her last name. And we'll be talking with her coming up on September 3rd about healing stage 4 uterine cancer naturally. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? For those that are watching live on the show, I'm going to bring this up so that you guys can actually see this. It's right on our homepage. And then we've got Dr. Kayla Daniel, The Secrets of Detoxification, coming up on September 3rd. So that's going to be a lot of fun, as well as Brian Hoyer. And we'll be talking with him about EMF solutions that actually work. And so there's a lot of weird stuff going on with EMF. There's a lot of kind of fake science going on out there, and we're going to talk about your home and how to protect your home from EMF. So that's going to be really cool. And then we have Dr. Donnie Wilson. We'll be talking with him about healing leaky gut and digestive disorders. So stay tuned to our show for upcoming shows coming up. But I want to let you guys know before we start this show that if you have not checked out the Extreme Health Academy, make sure to check that out, because we are doing some pretty awesome stuff inside there. Every single week, we do a live Q&A call. So if you guys want to join us and ask your questions to Dr. John Bergman and myself, we answer all of your health questions, and then we categorize them, and so that way they're searchable. We release these high-level courses every single month, giving you all the tools that you need to take your health to new levels. Like, that's really what we want to do, right? Is we really want to live a long time. We want to live in a healthy body. We want to live and have good hormone levels, be able to sleep good, sleep well. We want to be able to have a sex drive and be able to go to the bathroom and all that good stuff. And why couldn't we do that all the way up until we're 90 or 100 or 150? So that's what the Extreme Health Academy is all about. We're doing some really, really awesome things in there. So I wanted to tell you about that. So today we have Patrick McKeown. We're going to be talking about breathing. And like I said, he's sort of taken up the teaching the Buteyko method, breathing method. And he's really, really taking that work a lot further. And his website is oxygenadvantage.com. And I'll show you that in just a second. But he's the director of the Buteyko Clinic International and chairman of its advisory board. And he's got professional memberships in the Royal Society of Biology. He's a full member of the Physiological Society and Academy of Applied Myofunctional Sciences. He does workshops around the world, and super happy to have him on the show today. So let me bring his mic and camera on. Patrick, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Justin. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Super, super excited. So you were telling me before the show that you are in Ireland right now.
Yes, I'm just on the west coast. Small enough town, it's called Galway, has a population of about 40,000 people. And yesterday I flew in from Toronto, and a few days before that I'd come in from LA. So I live here, but I travel quite a lot.
Wow. What were you doing in Toronto and LA? Doing workshops or classes, teaching?
So in Toronto we were at a conference. It was mainly by dentists in terms of sleep medicine. So it's talking about dentists are quite interested in the whole field of sleep. And sleep has really came on the radar in the medical world, probably in the last 5 to 10 years. It's relatively recent, even though it affects, in terms of when we're talking about sleep disorder breathing, how can you breathe to improve that? And how can you breathe to reduce obstructive sleep apnea? So the training in LA was specifically about sleep, and in Toronto it was specifically about improving sports performance, and that's across all levels. So we've kind of two different tiers to it. Buteyko is all about health, and then Oxygen Advantage is sports.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, I know you have a couple different websites which we'll feature. So that's interesting. So which one excites you more, actually? Which one do you get more excited about doing talks about and things like that?
I think the Oxygen Advantage is very unique in terms of, yeah, like my background was Buteyko, and for 20 years I've been, for almost 20 years, teaching the Buteyko method. And it's getting that method and applying it then for sports. I think it's the application, and also in sports, people generally don't consider their breathing, but yet it's breathing that sets the limits. And many athletes have poor breathing patterns, but also what we can do with the breath, in that we can simulate altitude training by lowering blood oxygen saturation, by increasing CO2, and it's that we're provoking the body to change the blood acidosis, and that in turn is going to improve buffering capacity. So there are small things that any individual can do, regardless of what level they are in sports, to get performance increments. And the other thing is, look at sleep. For 20 years, I had really poor breathing. I had asthma as a kid. My teenage years was asthma, and I was a mouth breather. My nose was chronically blocked. And it's only in the last 8, 9 years that doctors have recognized this unified airway, that if you have inflammation on your lungs, it travels up to your nose. Or if you have inflammation in your nose, there's infectious pathogens can travel down to your lungs. But the thing about it is, if you've got a stuffy nose, you're twice as likely to have sleep problems. So here we have an individual with asthma. They have a problem with their lungs, their nose is affected, their sleep is affected, and also because they mouth breathe, because of chronic nasal obstruction, mouth breathing is keeping them in more sympathetic response, because we breathe fast when we breathe through the mouth. And in order to activate the parasympathetic response, to bring the body into relaxation, slow breathing is necessary.
Yeah, it's interesting. So breathing through your mouth, like, how I've listened to a handful of your podcasts that you've done, and, you say, like, if someone's traveling or someone's just sitting somewhere reading a book, and you can always look and see, if their mouth is open, and, so many people, their mouth is open. And so let's talk a little bit about like the dangers of breathing through your mouth, and then we'll talk about maybe why that's dangerous when you sleep. But what's wrong with breathing through your mouth?
It's not normal. Our physiological normal mode of breathing was always in and out through the nose. All animals are nasal breathers with the exception of a dog on a hot day, and a couple of other animals, birds, they can breathe through an open mouth. But if an animal mouth breathes, the animal is sick, and the sicker the animal becomes, the more likely they are to switch to mouth breathing. Our ancestors were nasal breathers. We know that from the shape of skulls. When the mouth is closed, the tongue is in the roof of the mouth, and when the tongue is in the roof of the mouth, it helps to shape the top jaw during development. So a mouth breathing face is a wider face with room for the tongue. A nasal breather is a wider face with room for their tongue. Conversely, a mouth breather, generally the top jaw can be set back, the lower jaw is set back, and the tongue is falling into the airway. I have the facial features of somebody who had their mouth open all the way throughout my childhood. And it has terrible implications in sleep, forward head posture, mental health in children. There's a huge association between mouth breathing, sleep disorder breathing, and ADHD, learning difficulties. We know that up to 50% of studied children are persistently mouth breathing. We don't have a figure for adults because it's just a topic that doesn't get attention. But I put it out there. Any of your listeners who are waking up with a dry mouth in the morning, they're not likely to wake up feeling fresh, because breathing through the nose, you have a deeper sleep, you have a better sleep, and it's more quality sleep. Mouth breathing just doesn't do it.
Now, I know I was going to ask you how you got involved in all this, but I know that you had rhinitis, some sleep disorders as a result of breathing issues and nasal issues, as well as asthma too, right? So you had a lot of things to overcome.
Yes.
what happened? Like, what led you? Because the typical person is going to go to a doctor, and you're never going to hear any of this kind of stuff. So how did you
Yes.
start looking at this kind of information?
I just came across it by accident. I was 20 years, almost 20 years going to doctors for asthma. Um, and with that, then I had an operation on my nose in 1994 to help make my breathing better for the nose. But the good surgeon who opened up my nose, he never told me to actually breathe through it. And we
Ah,
have thousands of children who are doing adenoidectomy, tonsillectomy, and adults who are getting, operations to address deviated septum, etc. If you have, if you are persistently mouth breathing for more than 6 months, and I'm not saying that you're 100% a mouth breather, but most people will switch from mouth to nose. Even if they're doing simple walking, you often see that they have the mouth hanging open. If you're doing that for a period of time, it's almost, neuroplasticity, and that the brain establishes new neural pathways, and that becomes your normal mode to breathe. So even when you address the nose, it's also important to rehabilitate breathing. And really, if an individual has been persistently mouth breathing, they're more likely to be upper chest breathing. If you're not using your diaphragm, it's a problem because diaphragmatic breathing is essential. If you look at the lobes of the lungs, most concentration of blood, because of gravity, are actually in the lower regions of the lungs. But if you're mouth breathing, you'll tend to ventilate the upper regions of the lungs. So you're bringing air more likely into the upper regions, but the greatest concentration of blood is in the lower regions. So this is a poor ventilated, poor gas exchange is going to take place. Nose breathing will take the air deeper into the lungs. But also as you breathe through your nose, you pick up a gas called nitric oxide.
mm-hmm.
And nitric oxide, you're taking it from the nasal cavity, down the throat, into the bronchi, into the bronchioles, and nitric oxide helps to redistribute blood from the lower lobes of the lungs to the upper. So Swift, in 1988, they looked at blood oxygen uptake with individuals who were after having jaw surgery, and their jaws were wired shut, so it forced them to continuously breathe through their nose. Oxygen uptake was 10% higher.
Wow.
Now, not only that, if you look at the work of an ENT called Dr. James Bartley,
Mm-hmm.
and he's written a number of different papers, published in textbooks as well, medical textbooks about nasal breathing. Few things about breathing through the nose. Number one is you have a better end-tidal CO2, or you've got more normal carbon dioxide in the blood. Now, a lot of people consider bring in as much oxygen as you can and get rid of as much CO2 as you can.
Right.
But they don't consider that back in 1904, a physiologist by the name of Dr. Christian Bohr, he said that the release of oxygen from the red blood cells takes place in the presence of carbon dioxide. If you're breathing hard, you're losing too much CO2, and the affinity of hemoglobin, which are the red blood cells for oxygen, increases. So the ironic thing is that the harder you breathe, the less oxygen that gets delivered. And just even on that basis, mouth breathing, on the other hand, is more likely to be upper chest, your fight or flight, and individuals with anxiety are more likely to have nasal congestion. Nasal congestion is inversely related to carbon dioxide. So we have simple tools to help open up your nose in a few minutes, and I'll show you the exercise, Justin. Your listeners can practice it. We can also help to open up the lungs. We can improve body temperature in 3 to 4 minutes by changing breathing patterns and activate the relaxation response. And that's one aspect of what we do, is improving functional breathing. Now, how much of the world's population is affected by dysfunctional breathing? A Cochrane review in 2013 said that 9.5% of the population, the Western population, is at a high risk or displaying characteristics of hyperventilation syndrome. So that's 1 in 10 people. But I think it's widely, underdiagnosed because nobody seems to look out for it. And there has been, this is not a new phenomenon. It was first documented back 1870s when soldiers were returning back from the American Civil War. It was first called the Costa syndrome.
Uh-huh.
So stress breathing, it's almost that the human body, if we're under long-term stress, that our breathing changes. Stress changes our breathing patterns. But even when the stress is removed, the poor breathing pattern is maintained. It's not just that stress changes our breathing, but if we are breathing dysfunctionally, we're not using our diaphragm, we're breathing fast and harder, we're more likely to use our upper chest, that in turn negatively affects our sleep and it also contributes to our stress and anxiety. Traditionally, somebody with panic attack disorder, if they were having a panic attack, they were told breathe in and out of a brown paper bag.
Right.
The reason there was not to bring in oxygen, but it's actually to pool carbon dioxide, because we want to have a normal amount of CO2. But if we have this belief that the more air we breathe in, the more oxygen we get delivered to the cells, it's totally counter. That's not what happens. Food is good, but we don't deliberately and intentionally keep continuing eating all day, because that's going to have negative effects.
So you're
And
talking.
breathing, how much air should we breathe?
Yeah. So you're talking almost the same kind of of an idea, is that you don't want to breathe super fast or super deep. You're talking about more rhythmic breathing, right, through your nose, soft. So when you do that, though, because you know how sometimes you really want to just take a it just feels good in your lungs, take a big deep breath in your mouth. What is that doing if someone does that? Is that a bad thing? Or like if someone does that every now and then, but 99% of the time they're breathing through their nose, is that okay, do you think?
It depends how often they do it.
Okay.
If they're only doing it now and again, it's no problem.
Okay.
But the normal blood pH, the primary regulator of blood pH is not our diet, it's actually our breathing.
Right.
It's through the breath that the body gets rid of 10,000 milliequivalents of acid per day. The kidneys are our backup, and that gets rid of 100 milliequivalents.
Okay.
So say, for instance, if the individual has got a habit of breathing too hard, it's almost that their blood pH is normal, but their end-tidal CO2 or arterial CO2 is reduced. What happens is that if carbon dioxide increases in the blood, the respiratory center in the brain sends a message to breathe. So as soon as CO2 increases, the respiratory center in the brain, which is monitoring blood pH and CO2, it sends a stimulus to breathe. Individuals with breathing pattern disorders, they often sigh a lot. Individuals with panic attack, and they have irregular breathing. So we have a measurement, and the measurement is called the control pause in Buteyko, or body oxygen level test in the oxygen advantage. And basically it involves the individual. You take a normal breath in through your nose, a normal breath out through your nose, you pinch your nose and you hold your breath, and you time it until you feel the first definite desire to breathe. After that, then you release your nose and your breathing should be normal. The cutoff point is about 25 seconds. If you're less than 25 seconds, there's an 89% chance that you have breathing pattern disorders. And with that, you will have excessive breathlessness during physical exercise. You breathe harder during sleep. And if you're breathing harder during sleep, you're more likely to snore. But also you're increasing the negative pressure in the airways, especially in the throat. And this area here is a collapsible tube, which is liable to collapse. As we get older, the incidence and risk of sleep apnea increases, but we can change the risk and also reduce, the symptoms and onset of these symptoms by changing our breathing.
You know, it's fascinating. You were talking about the collapsible tube going down into your throat. And what's interesting to me is I wonder about this, and you probably know this. If someone is breathing incorrectly for their whole lifetime, and I want to get back to a question I have, because we have brand new twins that are 8 weeks old. So I want to ask you about that before we finish the call today. But if someone were to do like breathing incorrectly for their whole life, and they did that, would that actually change, do you think, the physical biology, like perhaps the shape of the lung or the ability for the lung to uptake oxygen, or the shape of the top of the lung or different organs? Would it actually change the physical shape of organs inside the body, do you think?
That I don't know. But I know that when we help address people and we change their breathing patterns, and their breath hold time increases, and their breathing becomes lighter, they feel better, and their symptoms reduce. I've been involved with, say, for example, with asthma, which affects about 10% of the Western population. 5 clinical trials. We had 2 published in the American Journal of Respiratory Critical Care Medicine last year, and I was a co-author on both papers. And it was looking at mouth-breathing children, but it also monitored their sleep. These kids were tired. They had a greater school absenteeism. So this is so simple. You can show individuals how to open up their nose by simply holding their breath. It's not new stuff. It's been documented since 1923. It's documented since 1909 the adverse effects on craniofacial growth in children as a result of mouth breathing. The top sleep doctor in the world is Dr. Christian Guilleminault. He's from Stanford Medical School, and he coined the phrase obstructive sleep apnea back in the 1970s. He also developed what's called the apnea-hypopnea index. His most recent papers are about the importance of nasal breathing during sleep. So here you have the top sleep doctor coming out. You know, we've so many published papers now in terms of asthma, and we see the results. So these are simple strategies that individuals can apply. And I'm going to give you a couple of them because I'd like people to experiment with their breath. It's not all about this breathe in and breathe out and take the, you know, bigger breaths. It's not, you know, there's so much to the breath when you look at it. And even this exercise here, which I'm going to give you, you obviously have to be standing in a room.
Okay.
Don't do it if you're pregnant or if you've got any severe health complaints.
Okay.
But basically it just involves you holding your breath. So you take a normal breath in through your nose, a normal breath out through your nose, and you pinch your nose with your fingers. You pinch your nose with your fingers, and then you start walking around the room. And continue walking until you have, say, a medium to strong air hunger. And then let go, but breathe in. And now breathe normal for a minute. And repeat it. If you do that 5 times, your nose will be decongested.
How long do
Now,
you walk?
the more you breathe,
how long do you walk around the room?
It will vary to the individual. Some people may walk for 60 paces, others may only get 20.
Okay.
So the key is continue walking and holding your breath until you feel kind of a medium to strong air hunger. Now, it's not about stress, but it's just pushing you a little bit, because what you want to do is you want to hold your breath so that carbon dioxide is increasing in the blood, and it's possibly the buildup of CO2 in the blood, which is helping to open up the nose. So recent papers, 2014, showing that non-inhaled carbon dioxide taken into the nose, it had an immediate effect on histamine levels, works within 10 minutes and lasts for up to 24 hours. Now, people are going to drugstores for antihistamines, etc. You have your own natural antihistamine in the body, and all you have to do is tap into it. And it's really important to breathe both in and out through your nose, because your nose is moistening and warming the air on the way in, but it's also trapping the moisture and heat on the breath on the way out. And it does this to maintain and help maintain the nose to be more open.
It's interesting that it does all that. Is there any, you know how you see people with either clogged nostrils or their clogged nose and they can't breathe, or you see people with different shaped nostrils. Some people have really, really big nostrils and some people have really thin.
Yes.
Is that, I'm curious from a myofascial perspective, I'm wondering if that, like what the cause for that is, and then if someone does have really narrow nostrils or a clogged nostril, what do they do about it then?
If you have a child that's been mouth breathing from, say, the age of 2 persistently up to the age of 8 or 9, it is going to have negative consequences on the shape of the face. The face is more likely to be narrow, the individual is more likely to have crooked teeth, and their jaws are set back. Now, if you think of this airway here, a good airway is the size of your thumb.
Okay.
If, because of mouth breathing, that the face is sinking downwards, the jaws get set back and it impinges on the airway. So now the individual doesn't have a good airway. They don't have the size of a thumb. They may have something like a cocktail stick at different places. That airway is prone to collapse for the rest of that person's life. There is such an amount of information on this. As I said, I came back from LA. I spoke to 200 dentists, and there may have been medical doctors as well in the audience. It was primarily in the relationship between sleep and breathing. These individuals know the connection between mouth breathing and the negative craniofacial changes that take place. So you see, I have very poor nostrils. I've got one nostril, the symmetry is very poor to the other one. I've got a deviated septum. That's all related to mouth breathing, because when the mouth is open, you tend to have a very high upper palate, and the upper palate then is infringing in the nasal cavity. And it's a vicious circle, because then your nostrils, your face is narrower, the nostrils aren't wide enough, and as a result you feel that you're not getting enough air breathing through your nose, so you switch to mouth breathing. However, I've been able to compensate by switching to nasal breathing. When I first did it back 20 years ago, I was feeling that I wasn't getting air hunger.
Right.
But I used the various exercises to reset your breathing, because the normal way to breathe is in and out through your nose. And congratulations, you've twins. In 1870, there was a book written by an American painter called George Catlin, and he thought that the American Indian traditions were dying out. So he went and he spent 1 year living with the North American Indians. He documented, their culture, etc. And he wrote a book called Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life. And this book was written back in 1870. He noticed that the Native American mothers, when the babies had their mouths open, the Indian mom would go over to the child and gently press the lips together in order to ensure nasal breathing. Because ultimately it's about, getting the most and reaching our full genetic potential, and it doesn't happen if we have the mouth open. And I know you're probably thinking to yourself, well, if this information, if I'm correct in what I'm saying, why isn't it out there? It's not out there. That's the reality of it. There's a huge amount of papers in the literature. I've put 50 papers up on buteikoclinic.com just for children. 50 papers, 50 abstracts there, looking at mouth breathing and forward head posture, mouth breathing and dental health, mouth breathing and ADHD, mouth breathing and academic performance. And I'll give you an example. When I was going through high school, I had really poor concentration because my mind would be in a fog all the time. I had poor sleep, and also I was breathing harder. I'm in that sympathetic fight or flight all the time. I was highly strung, and I couldn't concentrate. So for me to get the results, I had to study maybe 10 or 12 hours per day. And that's what I did because I was driven. But kids have got 10 times the risk of learning difficulties as a result of mouth breathing and poor sleep. These kids aren't stupid. Just these kids have a habit that nobody is addressing. And it's not just about children. You look at adults who are more stressed, they tend to breathe faster. Like, breathing is not just that involuntary activity. It's influenced by many things, and we can change it once the individual realizes, how can you breathe to open up your blood circulation? And what I'd like to do is spend 2 minutes showing you how to do this.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, if you're sitting comfortable, for your listeners to put one hand on their chest, maybe one hand just above their navel.
Okay.
And to tune into their breathing. To pay attention to the slightly colder air as it comes into the nose, and to the slightly warmer air as it leaves the nose. And as you feel your breathing, is gently to start slowing down the breath by really slowing down the speed of the breath as it comes into the nostrils. And at the top of the breath, you really have a relaxed and gentle and slow breath out. After you breathe out, wait until you feel the need to breathe in again. And when you feel the need to breathe in, take a soft, gentle and slow breath in. At the top of the breath, bring a total feeling of relaxation to the body and have a relaxed, gentle breath out. You are doing it correctly if you feel air hunger. So what we want you to do is to breathe less now than what you were doing before you started. To soften the breath, to quieten the breath, to calm the breath, to breathe almost that the fine hairs within the nostrils do not move. That as you are breathing, that there's hardly any turbulence coming into the nasal cavity. As you do it, pay attention to your body temperature. You need to feel a hunger for air as you're doing the exercises, and all that signifies is that carbon dioxide is increased in the blood. So again, all you're doing is just paying attention to the breath as it comes into the nose, paying attention to the breath as it leaves the nose, and really softening the breath so that you feel that you're not getting quite enough air. The objective is that you feel breathless, that you're feeling a little bit of air hunger, similar to what you would experience if you're going for a walk. Now, when most people do that, so do that for say 3 to 4 minutes. When most people do that, they feel an increase in body temperature. Their blood vessels dilate. Some people, if they get a little bit panicked doing it, it'll actually activate the sympathetic response. But with most people, when they soften and slow down the breathing, it'll activate the parasympathetic response. They feel drowsy, but they'll also feel increased watery saliva in the mouth. They will also feel that their body temperature is increasing. Cold hands are not the sign of a warm heart. Cold hands are a sign of a hard breather. And I'm not just talking about mouth breathing, because you can breathe too much air in and out through your nose. And over breathing is a habit that the body becomes accustomed to, And what we want to do is we reverse this habit by actually under breathing. And under breathing, and whether it's new neural pathways, whether it's a change, whether it's a biochemistry change, biomechanical, it doesn't matter, and we're not totally sure what's happening from a physiological point of view, but we can change breathing patterns. The individual then has light breathing, regular breathing. They've got better oxygen uptake in the blood and better oxygen delivery. They've also got improved blood circulation. So you think that we have 100,000 miles of blood vessels throughout the body. You can influence them through the breath. And what's more, it's not about taking the big breath that you commonly hear. You know, people are often saying, take that big breath, deep breath. There's a belief out there that the more air you breathe, the more oxygen uptake in the blood. It's not correct. During normal light breathing, your blood, if I was to measure, say, the SpO2, the saturation of the peripheral blood vessels with oxygen, it's 95 to 99%.
Okay.
So people have plenty of oxygen in their blood.
Yeah.
And if you breathe hard, well, you're already almost fully saturated. It's not going to bring any more oxygen into the blood. You know, so, but breathing hard gets rid of too much CO2. So the available oxygen in the blood doesn't get released so readily to the cells. It's not just enough to have plenty of oxygen in your blood. You need to get that oxygen out of the blood and deliver it to the cells, and carbon dioxide and body temperature are the catalyst for that.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Hang right there, Patrick. We're going to just do a quick little spot for some of our products here, but interesting stuff, right, guys? I hope you guys are enjoying this show with Patrick McKeown. If you want to check out his website is buteykoclinic.com is one of them, as well as the Oxygen Advantage, and I'll bring those up on the screen in just a second. Pretty cool stuff. I really, really like what he's talking about. And you know what I'll do is after we do a little spot here, for those that are watching live, make sure to ask your questions. So when we come back, I want to ask him about cold thermogenesis and getting into ice baths, and if you can actually breathe through your mouth and regulate your body temperature that way, as well as exercising with your mouth closed and all of that good stuff. So if you have any questions for Patrick, make sure to type them in the chat room, in the chat box on either Facebook or YouTube. So I wanted to let you guys know too, if you haven't checked out our store lately, we've got some really, really cool stuff. And I wanted to share with you this product that I just put on last night that I've been using for quite some time right now, called the Iris Blue Blocking Software. And if you are a listener to the show for a long time, you understand just how important light is to the body and how damaging toxic effects of blue light can be, because blue light essentially, it lowers your dopamine levels, it lowers your DHA levels, it lowers melatonin levels, screws up your hormones, it screws up your nervous system, your brain, the melanopsin in your eyes, it wrecks your sleep and nervous system. It does so many things to your body that it basically wrecks your mitochondria and your body's ability to sleep. So this Iris software, it's $10, or I think it's $15 now. But I highly recommend all of you get this, because it'll essentially eliminate all blue light from your computer screen or from your cell phone or anything that you're using it on, your tablet, your laptop. I used to use a website called Just Get Flux, but the problem with that was that it didn't lower the flicker rate would increase as the blue light decreased, and that was the main issue with that. Also, it didn't eliminate 100% of the blue light, which Iris does. So Iris has a free system and a paid system. The paid system is like $15. It's the best $15 you're ever going to spend to protect your nervous system, protect your eyes, and protect your brain, and all of that stuff. So make sure to check that out in our store. Also, I wanted to tell you about Stockton Aloe One. So many of you guys have been purchasing this lately, and it's such an amazing, amazing substance. Aloe vera is incredible. There's a reason why it's been used for thousands of years all around the world. It's got over 75 different active compounds. It's got vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, a special sort of magical substance called ormus that we've done a show on, and it's got unique sugars like polysaccharides and D-mannose. It's got lignans in it. But what it's great for is, obviously, we all know that aloe vera is really great for wound healing and gut healing. But it also does this outside of the body, but also inside the body to your gut and digestion. So it's an incredible substance. Aloe is just one of the best and most powerful superfoods that you could take every day. It's anti-aging. It's great. It's antifungal, antiviral. But what's really great about aloe is that it has a special component called ace-mannan in it. And what that does, it's an immune stimulator. It's antiviral. So ace-mannan induces your body's macrophages to produce interferon, interleukins, and tumor necrosis factor A in the body. So this is truly, truly a superfood of the highest order, aloe vera. And Stockton Aloe 1, I don't know if you guys have seen other aloe veras, but they come with all kinds of other ingredients in them. They're typically pasteurized, they're heated. Stockton Aloe 1 is the only one I can find that's raw. It's hand harvested, it's unfiltered, unprocessed, unheated. There's no preservatives, no chemicals. They ship it right after they harvest it, and they ship to you frozen, actually. So you can take 1 ounce to 8 ounces per day. I just love this stuff, aloe vera. But better than Stockton Aloe 1 is if you can get it fresh yourself. But the problem with that is that it's time consuming to do that. So make sure to go to our store and check out Stockton Aloe 1 if you guys are interested in any of these two products. So let me check over and see if there's any questions here from people on Facebook or people on YouTube. So if you guys are listening and watching right now live, make sure to type your questions in all capitals if you can. Let's see. Let me see if I can get one here on YouTube. C. Quinn asks about, okay, so it's just a little bit live. She asks about severe COPD.
Mm-hmm.
So she wants to know about that. Yeah.
60% of people with COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, 60% of them display some reversible airway narrowing. Now 40% don't. So if it's very severe, we're very limited in terms of applying breathing exercises. But if there's some reversible airway obstruction, it can help. Mm-hmm. And even with COPD, there's an exercise that we do called many small breath holds. We also use it for stress and for anxiety and for a panic attack. It's an emergency breathing exercise. Mm-hmm. And basically it goes like this. You take a normal breath in, a normal breath out through your nose. You pinch your nose and you hold your breath for 3 to 4 seconds. And then you let go, you breathe through your nose and you breathe normally for 10 seconds. And then again, you repeat, normal breath in, normal breath out, you pinch your nose and you hold your breath for 3 to 4 seconds. And then you let go and you breathe in and you breathe normally for 10 seconds. This helps to calm down the breath, but also as you do a small breath hold, the gas nitric oxide, which is continuously released into the nasal cavity, it pools during the breath hold. So if you hold your breath for 3 to 4 seconds, nitric oxide is pooling in the nose. Then when you release your nose, you're carrying nitric oxide into your lungs, and nitric oxide is a sterilizer but also a bronchodilator. So for somebody with severe breathing symptoms such as COPD, the first thing with COPD is just, for some people it may not help, but you know what, I would suggest that whoever, that person that you're talking about, to try that exercise for 5 minutes, 6 times throughout the day. So 5 minutes every hour. And the whole emphasis is to try and calm down the breath so that a gas exchange is taking place. You know, if you see people with COPD, they've got very poor breathing patterns. It's very fast. It's very much in the upper chest. And that in turn then is linked with anxiety. As COPD worsens, anxiety and depression worsens. So I think it's important to help calm down the breath and, you know, individual to individual, you'll know if you're getting a result.
So that's really interesting. I wonder, going back to a couple of the questions that I had before the little break that we took there, do you think that doing cold thermogenesis, ice baths, stuff like that, you know, it's interesting because, you know, you get into cold water and when I do it, it's the first response is, you know, you just do that. Is that something that you can work up towards doing is doing it all through your nose, I'm sure? Yes,
totally. I don't teach cold baths, but I have participated in them. Just about a month ago, I went to Malibu and XPT Life with Lard Hamilton and Gabby Reese. So there were a group of us. So we did all of the underwater work, but we also we started off the first day with 3 minutes submerged in ice baths, primarily through the nose. And, you know, that was my first time experiencing it to that extent. The key for me and people may have different experiences, but the key for me was to meditate into it. And the more I meditated into it and relaxed into it, then I was able to disassociate from the cold. I think it's a tremendous thing to do, because if you think of it this way, Justin, our lives are all about comfort. It's, we're sitting down, where everything is handed to us, we're not having to create our own food, we're not doing anything that our ancestors were doing. But the body needs, all the way throughout our evolution, we were always exposed to little stresses. And stresses and stressors are important for the body to make adaptations. So in terms of, if we were looking at strong breath holds, I work a lot with strong breath holds. And we do that to greatly disturb the blood acid base balance. So for instance, we do a breath hold to lower the blood oxygen saturation down into 85%, maybe 80%. At the same time, we're greatly increasing carbon dioxide. That's a stress to the body. And using, say, the Wim Hof approach, which also does breath holding, which, there are similarities and there's differences between the approaches. But if I look at Cox's paper, antagonizing the immune system to reduce pro-inflammatory cells can help autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis. And that's what the paper said, because the drugs that people are taking for autoimmune conditions are there to antagonize the immune system. But these drugs are expensive, they've got serious side effects. Could you be doing a breath hold technique or applying stressors to the body to get the body to make those adaptations? I see it with asthma, chest infections greatly reducing, so we're able to tap into the immune system through the breath. And a stress like cold water, cold baths, a stress like breath holding, I think it's really important. Physical exercise is also a stress, but a lot of people mightn't partake in it because they feel too breathless. So we will do breath holding and nasal breathing during physical exercise.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. So whether you're doing cardiovascular work, like on a treadmill or running up a hill,
Yes.
or if you're doing more weight-bearing exercises, it's more advantageous to breathe through your nose throughout the whole workout. Is that right?
It is, especially for a recreational athlete. Now, if you're working with a competitive athlete, you'll never attain 100% work rate by breathing through your nose. But in time you will, with practice. However, if it was a competitive athlete, what I'll do is I'll switch 50% of their training episodes to nasal breathing. And 50% to mouth breathing. I give 50% for nasal breathing, so I'm adding an extra load onto the individual. They feel a greater air hunger, I'm pushing them through it, and I also do breath holding. So say, for instance, when I was working with 400-meter sprinters, I had them nasal breathe for the first 360 meters. And on the 360th meter, I had them do a breath hold and to run the last 40 meters with no breath, holding the breath. So I'm putting a stress onto the athlete when they're most fatigued, because that's then making adaptations. And we've seen a lot of papers coming out of Europe in terms of repeated sprintability in athletes, that you can dramatically increase it. And this is even with elite athlete population. So for a recreational runner, when you breathe with nasal breathing, the higher your Bolt score, the more your breathlessness is reduced. Or in other words, you can have an increase in performance for the same level of intensity. So what I would say is, if you have an individual, measure their Bolt score, and if the comfortable breath hold time is less than 25 seconds, they tend to have disproportionate breathlessness.
Interesting.
So we will do the breathe light exercises to reset the respiratory center in the brain, but also with neuroplasticity, so that the individual then, when they go and do physical exercise, their breathing is lighter. Now, if you've got lighter breathing for the same level of exercise, it's easier to maintain nasal breathing. So if you think of it this way, you're walking down the sidewalk and you see an individual and all they're doing is slow walking, but they're huffing and panting for breath. At the very least, you'll say, is that person, they're unfit and they're unhealthy. Well, their breathing is disproportionate to their physical exercise. We can change that by specifically tapping in with breathing exercises. So when you do nasal breathing, I'd say go very easy for the first 10 to 15 minutes and tune into your breath, tune into your body. Your breathing will be deeper. So you will be taking a bigger breath through the nose, but you'll be taking less breaths. Now, you will be adding an extra load onto the breathing muscles, You're also using your diaphragm by breathing through your nose, and diaphragmatic breathing is really important for lymphatic drainage, for helping to redistribute blood throughout the rest of the body, but also your diaphragm is very much linked to your emotions. So as I
Oh,
said earlier on, people with COPD, there's a direct relationship between the onset of severity of COPD and depression.
interesting.
Now, you could say, well, they're kind of suffocating and they're feeling that air hunger, but also there is a change to their breathing patterns that they're not using their diaphragm. So diaphragmatic breathing during walking, during light running, during exercise, and maintain nasal breathing. You're less likely to overtrain, you get better oxygen delivery, you're more likely to stay aerobically for longer, and also you recover quicker. And also, people with asthma, if you're breathing hard in and out through your mouth, you're literally sucking moisture out of the airways, and this is going to cause inflammation. The airways narrow, you feel you're not getting enough air, and you breathe harder. In some studies, bronchoconstriction, which basically is narrowing of the airways,
Uh-huh.
that it was completely eliminated when individuals switched to nasal breathing during running. So yes, at the start, it's a bit tougher. Um, you could, for example, even do high intensity interval training. And it's so surprising. Do 30 seconds of hard, all out effort breathing through your nose. And then recover, say, maybe 30 seconds to a minute. And then 30 seconds all out effort breathing through your nose. So you can even do high intensity interval training nasal breathing.
That's
But
interesting.
see how it goes for you.
Yeah, interesting. So when it comes to high intensity training like that, I remember when I was doing sprints upstairs and stuff like that. In the wintertime, it was really challenging because when you'd breathe either through your nose or through your mouth, going up those stairs, the air was cold and it felt like it was burning your lungs or
Yes.
burning the inside of your nose. Is that something you just work through?
Yeah, and when you leave like there's irritant receptors as well that the nose become runny a little bit
Uh huh.
when you're breathing cold air through your nose. It's a matter of just working through it, but also you don't want to be breathing so hard and so intensely, because if you're breathing really cold air, dry air in through your nose, it can irritate the nose. So you may
Okay.
feel that your nose might get sore. You may feel some sinus pains as an issue as a result of it.
Okay.
Um, is there anything that you can do through, I suppose, it's the degree of exercise that your breathing shouldn't be so labored. Now, we use small products, and I've no financial interest in them or anything like that, but there's products on the market, nasal dilators. One is called a turbine that we use. And basically, if you put one finger here and one finger either side of your nose, and just gently prise your nostrils,
I
you will
see.
feel that it's easier to breathe through.
Right.
That's called a Cottle maneuver. And Dr. Morris Cottle, he was an ENT back in the 1970s, and he said that the nose is responsible for 30 functions in the human body. So you can get little nasal dilators, plastic ones that help open up the nose that last you for quite a long time. So if you do have nostrils like mine,
Uh
I
huh.
have to use the turbine because I don't want to go back and get a nasal operation. I've already done that, and you know, I don't feel that that's something for me. I want something that's non-invasive, so I'll use something like the turbine to help open up the nose that I can maintain good running with nasal breathing.
Now, Patrick, on the turbine product, is that something? Because I used to use the breathe right strips, and those are really cool. But the problem with that is you have to keep buying them. Is the turbine something that you buy once and use
Yes,
all the time? Yeah.
yes, it's plastic. It's plastic, and what you do is you can just wash it, say, in cold water. I don't have one to show you an example, but they're a little plastic device that goes up into the nose. And the other thing is that as you sweat, the breathe right strips mightn't adhere so well. It's difficult to put them onto the bridge of the nose due to sweat, or they may come off easier. So that's why we go with the plastic
Okay.
devices.
Interesting. So, what about people that have clogged nose, like they've got a lot of mucus or congestion? I know you can
Yes.
do neti pots, and you can put a little bit of iodine or put a little bit of sea salt, or some people even do urine. Like their own urine, and that it sounds kind of crazy, but there's lots of things you can do to unclog, and then obviously it's probably something we're eating that's causing that mucus. So a mucusless food is probably a good idea too, right?
Yeah, but even it's over breathing. Your nose regulates itself when you breathe through it. The problem is the nose, when it's stuffy, you feel you're not getting enough air, so you open your mouth to breathe. When you open your mouth to breathe, that's it. Your
Okay.
nose is just going to it's only going to worsen it. I have thousands of people coming into me over since 2002, and they come in with nasal congestion. And all I do is simply get them, as I said, the exercise earlier on. Breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your nose, pinch your nose, hold your nose, and start walking around your room. And continue walking until you feel a pretty strong air hunger. Then let
Okay.
go and breathe in through your nose. Wait a minute and do it again, because it's not just mucus. Like your listeners will be aware, their nose feels stuffy and they're blowing their nose, but it still feels stuffy. So the problem is inflammation of the blood vessels. How do we shrink the blood vessels within the nose? You shrink them by holding your breath. And
Interesting.
that's been documented since 1923, that breath holding in animals and man caused nasal resistance to reduce. But of course, we've had one clinical paper on this and published in the journal Clinical Otolaryngology. We had
Right.
it published as a letter, but it reduced nasal symptoms by 70% at 3-month follow-up. That's a 70% reduction of symptoms without medications and without surgery. So again, persist with nasal breathing, and also at nighttime, we use paper tape across the lips at night because again we want to maintain nasal breathing, and it's something that we've been doing for 20 years. It makes a huge difference to sleep. If your listeners are waking up with a dry mouth, they're not likely to wake up feeling refreshed.
Interesting. So, what I was thinking about some of those tapes, there's different tapes that you can get if you search around on Amazon as well as just on the internet. There's different tapes, and you know about those. But one of the issues that I have is I always seem to have like a half beard going on. I don't shave, I'm just lazy about all that. So I know on Amazon I've seen little products that you can fit over your head that kind of cup the bottom of your chin that will bring your jaw up. But the only thing I'm wondering about that is the fact that it's changing the structure of your face a little bit.
Yes, and we've looked at them. I wrote about those in the book Oxygen Advantage because we honestly wanted to have that device. We wanted to have a device that you wouldn't have to be taping, that you could just pull the chin up. The problem is that the strap is coming from the back of the head to the chin, and it's pulling the chin back in on the airway. And your airway, it's so important to keep the airway open. So what I would say is, even, lip seal tape. There's a Dr. Frank Seaman who developed that about a year ago, but they're currently testing because now beards are fashionable. So they're currently testing now new strips for beards. So I think it will be only a matter of time, and we really do. I think the tape is just a better approach because it's not changing the anatomy of the airway. It's actually improving it.
Yeah.
It's pulling the jaw forward. But the other thing is, when you're going about your daily business, your 3/4 of your tongue should be resting in the roof of the mouth. So we should always have the jaws should be relaxed, the lips together, and 3/4 of the tongue in the roof of the mouth. And during sleep, we also want the tongue going up into the roof of the mouth, because if your tongue is falling back, it's actually falling into the airway. And if it falls into the airway, then you either get upper airway resistance, you get turbulence, you will have increased snoring because of it, because you can snore through your mouth or through your nose, but obstructive sleep apnea is a dreadful complaint. And it's affecting a huge incidence now of people, especially over 40 and 50 years of age, and more so males.
I hear you. Yeah, so fascinating. We have a couple questions. So I think what we'll do is kind of wrapping up the show a little bit. I'll take this one from Genevieve on Facebook, and then I'll head on over to YouTube and see if there's any questions in all caps on YouTube. But Genevieve asks, and we'll kind of really go quickly through some of these questions.
Yeah.
When is the best time? So is there a best time of day to do any of these breathing exercises? Does it matter?
Yeah, 15 minutes before you go to bed at night is brilliant for sleep.
Okay.
But anytime that you're feeling that your breathing is a little bit labored during the day, sit down, slow down the breath, and get air hunger. It's a very good meditation as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, let me see here on another question from, thanks guys on YouTube for putting them in all caps, because when I'm scrolling through it really helps. Okay, so PP on YouTube says, due to low iron, I run out of breath and I feel dizzy at times. I'm working on my diet because I already had an iron infusion and it didn't work for me. Any advice? So this person has low iron levels and feels dizzy as a result of it.
I don't know, straight off. So that I can't answer.
Okay.
I can give you a couple of points, but doing breath holding could be helpful in terms of the body does increase its natural production of erythropoietin, which is a hormone, to stimulate the maturation of red blood cells. Your spleen also contains very richly dense packed red blood cells. And if you do 5 strong breath holds, spleen releases more red blood cells into circulation. So for individuals that may be, say, deficient in hemoglobin, etc., could breath work help there? I can't tell you for sure, but you know what? You have nothing to lose. Give it a go and see how it goes.
Yeah, give it a go. I like that. Another question here on YouTube. Did you say mouth breathing causes forehead? I think she
Forward
misspelled
head posture.
forward, or she says forehead. Yeah, it's got to be forward head posture. So mouth breathing causes forward head posture. What are its effects on tendonitis? Interesting.
That I don't know in tendonitis. Certainly there's enough in the literature showing the relationship between forward head posture and mouth breathing. Mouth breathing affects the whole biomechanics of the breath, the respiratory structure. You know, again, there's a lot of papers on it. You'll see them on our website, Buteyko Clinic, because we have it in the section how Buteyko could help with your childhood development. And when you see that, you'll see the anatomy and how mouth breathing negatively affects that.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, I'm just bringing up your website right now. So Buteyko Clinic is one of your websites, right? And then you have the other one focused more on sports?
Yeah, this one here is primarily on health. So if you go to the home page,
Okay. Let's check this out.
so
This
you
is
just
really great.
click on the logo.
Yeah, it's taking a little second here. I think because we're streaming, so it's kind of using a lot of the computer bandwidth, but here we go. It should load up here
So
pretty
then
quick.
it's just a matter then of you scroll down
Uh-huh.
and keep scrolling, and you see that link then, you see the 4 links there, you just have them.
Yep.
Parents How Buteyko can help with your child's development. If you click on that, you'll see videos from different experts on the right hand side, and then you'll see the abstracts on the left hand side. So how mouth breathing causes crooked teeth, mouth breathing and changes to body posture there. There's Dr. Bill Hang. He's a really highly respected orthodontist from Los Angeles. And it's funny, he comes over to Ireland on Friday, so I pick him up in Dublin Airport.
Oh, cool.
And for decades, he's talking about orthodontistry. It's not just about fixing the teeth. We need to look at the airway. So he's airway focused, because some orthodontists, unfortunately, what they do is they extract teeth. But if you lose teeth, what's going to happen is that your jaws are going to set back. And there's never enough room there. You don't want your airway compromised in your goal to have straight teeth. So any parent that's out there, if you have children and they are doing orthodontic treatment, I would absolutely emphasize functional orthodontics, maxillary expansion, and no extractions. No extractions if possible. If your orthodontist is recommending extractions, I would suggest get a second opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, you have so much information here. You know, when I see this image here about, a child breastfeeding here and the shape of the tongue,
Yes.
or the shape of the mouth,
Yes.
but then the tongue and latching. And I'm wondering,
Yes.
so with our twins are now 2 months old. What should we be looking out for when it comes to them mouth breathing and how to prevent that?
Generally, with 2 months old, there'll be specifically innate nasal breathers. It can happen a few months later. The first thing that I would look at in a newborn baby is tongue tie. Tongue tie is the frenulum if it's attaching the tongue to the floor of the mouth. If the tongue is tied, the tongue can't get motion.
Okay.
So during breastfeeding, the baby isn't able to extrapolate the milk from the mother because the tongue doesn't have the movement. So what happens then is that the baby starts chomping on the mother. The mother, of course, then is getting sore, and the baby isn't getting adequate food. So then what happens is that the bottle is introduced. But giving a child a bottle, yeah, it's all fine, but the only problem with it is that it's too easy for the baby to get the milk from the bottle. It's the thing about breastfeeding is not about just nutrition. Breastfeeding is about developing the muscles of the jaws and face, because it requires work for the baby to take the milk from the breast. And that's really important in terms of, so if you have a breastfed baby, they are more likely to be nasal breathers than a bottle fed baby. And the other thing is pacifier use. Every 1 year of pacifier use, it increases the risk of mouth breathing by 25%. Now, when it comes to your children, I wouldn't be overly obsessive about it, but I would pay attention to it. And, anytime that the lips are together, gently closing their mouths, and also looking at the environment. As you mentioned earlier on, dairy does have an impact. I would say probably with about 50% of people who are prone to rhinitis.
Okay.
So it may be necessary, if the baby is clogged up, it may be necessary maybe to shift different foods. Having the bedroom airy, we should always be living in an airy bedroom. We shouldn't be having recirculated air. It shouldn't be stuffy, because if the air is stuffy, we will tend to breathe harder. And also the food that we are eating. Like, we're being fed burgers and, if you think of the normal food that people are eating out there, everything is munched up for them. Whereas our ancestors, we have teeth that are designed to break down meat, break down even, vegetables, etc. That's what the teeth are for. And that's developing the jaws. Because if you have good jaws, you're more likely to have a good airway.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, with twins, I tell you, man, it's so challenging with the breastfeeding and with pacifiers and these types of things. But the good thing is that we have access to people like you and this kind of knowledge, and they're only 2 months old. So we can change some habits and change some things. But that's one of the issues with, obviously, with babies is they're not latching correctly to the breast, to the nipple. And so, when you have twins and they're both crying, it's like so simple to give them a bottle, where it's all breast milk, of course. But what I thought was interesting, what you said, it's not just about nutrition. This is about something more.
Yeah. When I was in Paris a couple of years ago, I spoke in Bordeaux, and Dr. Christian Guillemeau, he also spoke there. And I've put an article on that last link. It's called Creating Miracle Children. But basically, it's taking Dr. Christian Guillemeau's notes, because it was from him that I first heard of the importance of breastfeeding for manipulation of the muscles of the jaws and face to develop the airway. And, given that he is the founding father that I would consider of sleep medicine, I think we should be listening to him.
Interesting. I just did a little Google search trying to get this on the site before we go for Creating Miracle Children. Is that an article that you said is on someone else's website?
No, it's on our own website. But if you go to, the last page that you went to there, the children's page where you've seen all the videos on the right-hand side.
Uh-huh. Let me bring that up really quick.
The article is right at the bottom of that.
Okay, so let me bring that up. So that article about creating miracle children is at the bottom of that?
Yeah, there's a link at the top. If you clicked it, it should bring you down to it. But these are all interesting papers here. If you just scroll down a small bit there, yes, you see there, Creating Miracle Children by Patrick McKeown.
I see. Okay.
But even if you're looking at like body posture, voice, etc., so that's the article there.
I see. Okay.
So I spoke about my own daughter as well, because I didn't realize the implications back in 2010 with my own child, and she was tongue-tied. And she had problems feeding off the breast, but we didn't know it. So we introduced a bottle. And, unfortunately, when you don't know the information, you go with whatever the best wisdom is out there. But there's a huge amount of people now. There's a whole movement, myofunctional therapy, and it's really being strong now, pushed, especially in LA, Los Angeles, in conjunction with Stanford Medical School. Joy Moller there, she's an instructor for about 30 years, looking into babies' mouths and helping babies to achieve their full potential using myofunctional therapy.
Wow. Yeah, we had the whole myofunctional aspect to the shape of our face and the shape of our head and jaw and all that's so fascinating. We had a guest on a while back, Carol Vanderstoop from, I think she's in Texas, but she talked a lot about some of the same things you're talking about with structure. And it's just, man, it really blows you away when you learn about this stuff. If someone's listening around the world, what's the best thing for them to do? Should they start doing exercises? Are there courses on your website? Or like, how could they learn more about putting into practice all these different exercises that you've been talking about?
Sure. Well, I suppose the first thing you could do is pay attention to your breathing and measure your breath hold time. I've got 8 books across a number of different disciplines, for parents, for children, for sleep apnea, for anxiety, for panic attacks, for mindfulness, for asthma, and for sports. We've also online courses. I do online webinars. people dial in. It's for 2 hours, and I guide them through the exercises, so that they can be suitable for people. We've got ones for panic attack, for sleep, and for asthma.
Oh,
So there's
wow.
a variety of different ways of doing it. Our YouTube channel, I've got some videos up there, different things. But I would say that anybody with nasal congestion, with asthma, with sleep disorder breathing, and with anxiety, you can get so much out of changing your breathing. And it's not about taking those big breaths. It's about gently softening your breathing to get air hunger, to reset your breathing, to change your breathing patterns, but also for those of you who are suitable to doing stronger breath holds, because that's causing adaptations which are very beneficial. There's so much you can do, but at the very least, if you're breathing through your mouth, start switching to nasal breathing. It's not normal to mouth breathe, and I can honestly say nobody is getting away with some negative implication as a result of mouth breathing.
Hmm.
It has to be affecting you some way.
Last question. What about when you're talking? Is that okay to mouth breathe?
I have a rule of thumb with talking is I don't hear my breathing during talking.
Okay. Okay.
I don't always nasal breathe because sometimes it disturbs the speech
Right.
too much. There's times I do, but then there's times that I take a sharp, just a very quick mouth breath. Um, but the rule of thumb is, yeah, I don't hear my breathing during talking.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Good stuff to know. Yeah, it's fascinating because this kind of stuff is like, it's not going to be talked about because you can't really take a pill for it. They can't market this and monetize it like you can with a lot of other diseases. And so it's just interesting to me that there's something that's so foundational to our health and to our physiology, that because they can't monetize it, you don't hear about it. And that makes a lot of sense. And so, but this stuff is super, super important for longevity, for disease prevention, for proper oxygenation in the body, and so many other different factors in our life. So, Patrick, man, you're awesome. Thanks for being on the show today. It's really great.
Great. Thanks so much, Justin. That was great.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm going to do a little wrap up, and I will contact you via email, and send you the link to this once it's published, and then you can feel free to share it. But man, I appreciate your work, the work that you do, and keep doing it, man.
Great. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, there you go, Mr. Patrick McKeown from ButeykoClinic.com. What did you guys think about that? Pretty cool, huh? Interesting guy. And let me just, we're going to do another show here pretty soon in about a half an hour. So I want to make sure that that we do a short wrap up for this show. But let's see. Teresa says, does this technique get the blood pressure to normalize during sleep? I would guess yes. Teresa, I'm sorry I didn't see your question during the show, but I would look into his website, ButeykoClinic.com and OxygenAdvantage.com. He's also got one called the ButeykoDVD.com. Let me bring that up on the screen. I haven't taken a look at that yet, and I think it might be interesting because it sounds to me like there's some courses or video content that you guys could check out and we could check out. Let me bring this onto the screen here. Buteyko Clinic. Oh, actually, Buteyko DVD. Okay, it looks just like ButeykoClinic.com. DVD sets and online courses. This is cool. Choose the best DVD for you and learn the Buteyko method now. Interesting. Okay. This is really, really cool. Yeah, I really like this. Yeah, so I hope you guys liked that show. That was episode 595. And before we close out, I want to tell you guys about a couple things that I, in our store that I think you guys might really like, and that is the. Actually, let me do this real quick. That is the Doctor Pro Air Purifier. Really cool stuff. I am in agreement with Patrick that you want to have lots of airflow and good airflow in your room. But if you are going to close the windows, you got to have and make sure to have an air purifier. And there's lots of different ways to purify the air. You can bring plants in. I recommend doing all of them. But this is a really great air purifier if you haven't checked it out. It's the one that we recommend, the one that we use. In fact, just this morning, we have an air conditioner that's on the outside of our house. And check this out. So the gardeners came on the side of the house, and when they come in, all of their exhaust gets sucked in through the air conditioner. And so what happens is that our bedroom will smell like gasoline. It's just horrific. I just turned the Air Doctor Pro, and within a couple minutes, all of that is gone because it removes 99.99% of particles down to 0.003 microns. It's got a dual action carbon gas trap VOC filter. It's amazing. It's 30% quieter. There's videos too that you can see where he actually fills a whole room with smoke, and it just completely gets rid of it. So this Air Doctor Pro, if you really want to improve your sleep, this is going to be something that you'll want to do too. And the other product I want to tell you guys about too that a lot of you have been emailing us about is the Magnetico Sleep Pad. Now I got a little story to tell about this, and I don't know if this is the reason, but our twin boys, they're sleeping for like 9 and 10 hours. Ben last night slept for almost 12 hours. And one of the things that we do is they sleep on this Magnetico mattress pad, which is a way for you to bring magnetism into your life. And as many of you guys know, the three main aspects of health are light, water, and magnetism. And learning to work with magnets. You want to use and focus on magnets more in the evening time because according to Dr. Cruz, that increases, the magnetic flux increases during the evening time, and it has something to do with solar radiation. But what I love about this thing is that you're bathing your body in a magnetic field during the time that you're sleeping, which is going to be a third of your life. And the benefit of that on the cells of the body is incredible. So Dr. Jerry Tennant has talked about how our healing is voltage, right? And so we're magnetic and we're electric long before we're physical. And so it's an incredible piece of equipment to sort of add to your health and your life. And what I like about this kind of stuff, it's products that you can use every day, and you can use them for a huge chunk of your day. And so I really like that because you don't have to do anything. You're going to go to sleep anyway, and why not sleep in a magnetic field that helps to block and to push off wireless radiation, 5G networks, dirty electricity in your walls. This Magnetico sleep pad is it's essential in our life. And I don't know why, but maybe this has something to do with Will and Ben sleeping for 10 or 12 hours at 8 weeks old. The other thing that we do for them too is we have the Scalar Energy Rest Shield, which helps to mitigate EMF radiation. That's a golden pyramid here in our store, and that helps to mitigate the wireless radiation. It wraps it in a scalar field, which allows it to be more recognizable patterns to your body. And they have this thing about 6 feet from them while they're sleeping. I don't know if this is why they're sleeping, but these are all just different things that you can do to sort of hack your sleep. So if you guys are interested, I'll put a link to both of those products in the chat room. I'll put one there in the chat room in YouTube, and I'll put the other one in the chat room as well if you guys are interested in the Magnetico mattress pad as well as the Scalar Energy Rest Shield. I think you guys might like that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Oh yeah, I should put the Air Doctor Pro as well. Actually, from those links you can get there over to the Air Doctor Pro. But this was episode 500. Make sure I get this right for the podcast listeners so that I can make sure I get all the show notes for you guys. Episode 595, closing in on 600 shows. So when this show gets published, you can go to extremehealthradio.com/595. And if you guys are watching on YouTube right now, make sure to subscribe and get notifications on YouTube, because we're going to be doing another show actually in about, 20 minutes. So we're going to be on with Stephanie Seneff and talking about glyphosate. So Sequin says, does the EMF pyramids actually work? Well, you can check with Ken Rolla, and he's the developer of that, and I feel a significant difference with it. I don't know. I haven't scientifically tested with the Rest Shield pyramid, but I know there's tremendous power in the shape of pyramids, and he is just a stickler with using scalar technology. And so for me, my position on this stuff is to stack the odds in your favor and to do everything you possibly can. And so that means doing everything. And what I love about this kind of stuff is that it's great because you can just do it while you're sleeping and you don't even have to do anything about it. So, all right, guys, love you guys all. We're going to be back in about 20 minutes with Stephanie Seneff. So make sure to listen to that show. We're going to be on talking about glyphosate. We're going to be on talking about her recent research into cancer and glyphosate. And my mom was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I believe it was as a result of using Roundup in our garden in 1995 when that happened. So, man, it's crazy. This whole glyphosate thing. We'll probably get into the Monsanto issue as well, the lawsuit where they were forced to pay $290 million to a man who's dying of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So we'll get into that as well. So cool stuff. All right, guys, we love you so much. Let me see if there's any quick questions in the chat room before we take off. Okay, so Sequin's asking more about the Scalar Energy Rest Shield. I love that thing. We sleep with it every night. In fact, I want to get another one for the office at home. Okay, I think that is about it. All right, guys, we love you. We'll be back in about 20 minutes. I'm going to change, and then we'll do another show, and we'll be back at it. All right, guys, love you, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode, which is going to be episode 596. Can you believe that? All right, guys, love you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or